Exclusively on Secular Media Network, this is the Gaytheist Manifesto.
Hello and welcome to the Gaytheist Manifesto, your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement. I am your host, Callie Wright, joined by my co-host, Ari Coleman. Sup, dog?
Oh, hi, Callie. You're tearing me apart. I'm done with this world.
So this is the we still just need to pee edition of the Gaytheist Manifesto, because apparently we still need to be arguing over this shit.
Also, we've been holding it since the last time. They still won't let us pee.
Oh my god.
Our bladders are now larger than the rest of our bodies because they have extended so much.
Oh, wow.
Just a walking bladder. It's like on South Park where Randy gets testicular cancer and he has to carry his balls around in a wheelbarrow. Right. That's us with our bladders now.
Oh my god. Okay. So, obviously, you know, we did our talk with the Atheist Avengers, them being from North Carolina, about the whole North Carolina bill. But, you know, this is an argument that just keeps coming back. No matter what we do to kill it, it keeps coming back. It's like one of those creepy dolls from a bad horror movie.
Yeah.
And it's every bit as scary. Like, it literally terrifies me. And it's something that's kind of been on my mind lately because I've done a pretty significant amount of traveling lately. And, you know, in my travels, I ended up driving through North Carolina for about an hour. And I thought to myself, and I was sarcastically at first, like, wow, I guess this is a new, like, pre-travel ritual that I'm going to have to go through now. I'm going to have to think for a second, like, am I driving through a state where it's going to be illegal for me to piss now? And I said it kind of sarcastically and kind of, you know, shrugged it off like her or whatever. But then it really kind of started to weigh on me because, you know, now like we're literally facing the prospect of like being written into the law as second-class citizens in these places, in a place where they have declared via their legislative process that we don't deserve equal access to society. Obviously, you know, we make jokes because we've had this discussion before because sometimes that's all you can do. But you know, in all seriousness, these are things that, you know, that are happening. They're super serious. They have potentially devastating consequences for people. So I wanted to kind of do a sequel to our We Just Need to Pee episode from, almost the beginning of the show. It was episode 4, if memory serves. And
blast from the past.
Yeah.
That was way before my time, though.
We Just Need to Pee, the sequel.
Oh, yeah.
In a world.
Coming summer 2016.
Oh, God. That's terrible. Okay, so first I wanted to kind of lay out the situation here, okay? So obviously North Carolina's been in the news, so we know what's going on in North Carolina. But there are several other places where these things are in the works. So the ones that I were able to find: Illinois, Kansas, Massachusetts.
Wait, Illinois?
Yeah, Illinois.
How did I not know about this? No, that can't be true because Illinois trans people are written in as a protected class in Illinois law.
That doesn't mean that the state legislature can't try and pass one of these bills, though. It'll just end up getting struck down in court, like the North Carolina one is sure to be. So Illinois, Kansas, Massachusetts, Missouri, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Wisconsin.
And Georgia for a while, but they decided not to do that.
Right, not because it was the right thing to do, but because they saw the writing on the wall with business, which I guess we'll take it where we can get it, you know. Mm-hmm. So the National Center for Transgender Equality is where this comes from, and these guys actually track these bills in state legislatures. And as of, I think this was 2 weeks ago, they were tracking 49 bills, 32 of which dealt with bathroom access, And more than a third of those bathroom bills are still actively being considered. And the rest have either died in committee or were otherwise put on hold. So this is not a unique thing. This is a movement with growing momentum. So this is not like, oh, we're going to win the fight in North Carolina and these things are just going to go away. I mean, speaking of places where these bills almost happened, the South Dakota state legislature actually passed a bill and sent it to the governor's desk, one of these bills, that actually would have given school administrators the right to inspect the genitals of a kid if they, quote, weren't sure if they were in the right bathroom or not. So,
and trans people are the child molesters.
Right, like we're going to go ahead and legislate child molestation legally into the law to prevent, like, so we want school administrators doing it, not trans people. So, like, because that's apparently...
Wait, what if the school administrator is trans? What happens then?
Inception.
Dun, dun, dun. That wouldn't happen. You can't work in a school and be trans. That's just icky.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, I know one person who is like basically completely stealth because of that, because she's a substitute teacher, and she's terrified that if people find out that she's going to stop getting calls for substitute teaching jobs. And it's just, it's awful. So, and of course, looking at the arguments. So one of the things that I wanted to do with this, because in the first We Just Need to Pee episode, I think a lot of it was just kind of me venting about the places where these...
That's everyone's favorite part of the show.
Right.
I mean, other than my outros, of course.
Right, because everyone loves hearing me cry and get upset. Thanks, Ari. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Celeste is in the background raising her hand.
Right, yeah. She likes hearing me cry, too. The talk about fetishes is later.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of Jeremiah's kinks.
Oh, God, bad joke. So the first episode that we did of this, I think it was more just kind of me venting about kind of my personal feelings about these things and these places where the bills were being considered. I think there was one in Kentucky at the time. So that was, I mean, that's, pretty close to home for me. That's just 20 minutes south of me. And what I don't think we did really in that episode was actually lay out the counter arguments. So, at my talk in Georgia and in so many Facebook conversations and even a couple of emails, I've had so many people reach out to me and say, like, this person's being an asshole. I want to stand up for trans people, but I'm not exactly sure what to say. And you know what? That's fair, because obviously, those folks aren't living in our shoes, so I can't expect them to just automatically come up with all the great arguments, So what I told someone who asked about allyship at my talk in Georgia a couple of weeks ago, she said, as a person who isn't necessarily an activist, but just, I have a group of friends and I want to be an ally. I'm probably not going to be the person to sit and, to stand in front of a state legislature and give a speech or, do a podcast or anything like that. So what can I do? And what I explained to her is that, these things are in the news so often now that these conversations are going to come up. And they're likely going to come up in your circle of friends, on your Facebook wall, somewhere. Some people who are connected to you are eventually going to bring this up because it's been in the news so much, it's basically unavoidable. So you don't even have to be that person to come into the conversation and say, hey guys, wanted to talk to you for a second about trans bathroom access. Like, that's not a thing that has to happen because it's going to come up. So what I told this lady who asked me this question was to arm yourself with the arguments and with the information. So when these things come up, you can be the voice speaking against that bigotry, and you can be armed with the knowledge, with the correct arguments that someone can say, oh, you know what? I don't believe that. Type into the Google machine. Oh, wow. You know what? They were right. So we've come up with a couple of kind of the most common pushbacks that you hear when talking about giving equal access to trans people when it comes to bathroom access. And So the first one, and I think, I don't know, I'm not even comfortable. I'm not even comfortable ranking these from most to least absurd. So we'll just say that this one is absurd, is the idea of the trans person as the potential molester. Okay.
Yes.
And there are a myriad of problems with this argument. The way that it usually manifests itself is, I don't want to let this man in the bathroom with my daughter because this man is a potential child molester.
Or not even a child molester, just a straight up rapist, raping adults too.
Exactly. So, and there are several problems with this. First of all, the fact being that if you look at the vast majority of people who commit any kind of sexual offenses, they are straight, white, middle-aged men. So if we're going to legislate anyone out of bathrooms on their potentiality of being rapists or child molesters, here's looking at you, Congress. Because literally, I think somebody went and actually did the count, and more members of Congress have been arrested for doing inappropriate things in bathrooms than trans people ever have.
Because for trans people, it's about zero.
Right. And I don't want to pretend like every trans person is pure-hearted and good-natured, right? Just law of averages, there has to be a trans person who is a rapist or who is a pedophile somewhere. Yeah.
Obviously hate trans people.
Yes, I do. Terribly so. But, when you look at the numbers, those things just don't really ever happen. So... And then the other thing, if you want to go into numbers on this argument with the trans person as the potential molester, the first thing that's important to know, and this is a statistic that's really good to keep in your back pocket because it's pretty startling, 82% of sexual assaults are committed by someone who knows the victim.
Mm-hmm. Right? So it should be illegal to go into the bathroom with someone that you know.
Exactly. If we're following this line of logic, that's the thing that you should do if that's what your concern really is. So right off the bat, this idea of, even taking the trans issue out of it completely, this idea of the stranger lurking in the shadows in the bathroom, it's a thing that does happen, and I don't want to diminish the experiences of folks for whom that has happened. But if we're talking about things that you have a legitimate need to worry about, that's just not one. And then Ari, you brought up a good one. And that these whole things always completely ignore that there are trans people aside from trans women.
Yes. You just see those memes going around on the internet, like, do you want this guy going into the women's bathroom because this guy was, born female or whatever? And, those memes they're positive and negative at the same time. They're positive because they challenge the assumption that the only trans person that exists is a trans woman, which of course is not the case. There are trans men, there are non-binary people, there are all kinds of different trans people. So the assumption that this whole idea is based on, we don't want, a man going into a woman's bathroom. Well, do you want someone who looks completely male because they've been on testosterone for however many years going into the woman's bathroom? Because that's going to freak people out too. But then the harmful side of that is that it is kind of cis-sexist in the way that it is, it's putting cis standards of beauty on people, which is another topic, but anyway.
Well, right, and it reinforces the idea that you should be afraid of someone who is different from you in the bathroom in the first place.
Yeah, that too.
Because it does sort of, it plays off of a justification of that fear and says, okay, cool, you have that fear, here's something you didn't think about. So, like you said, I was kind of ambivalent about those. The first time I saw those kind of spreading around, my first thought was like, yeah, F you bigots. And then I thought about it for a second and I was like, I'm not sure that's really helpful because it assumes the problematic idea that, that you should be afraid of someone who's different from you in the bathroom because you shouldn't.
Right.
And then also, of course, built into this is the implication that you can tell a person is trans just by looking at them. Mm-hmm. And that's just plainly not true. You might think and you might be right, but you might not as well. There's a very, very big spectrum of quote unquote masculine look and presentation to feminine look and presentation. And I think perfect case in point to this, I've heard 2 stories now where a cis woman was violently ejected from a bathroom because someone thought that she was a trans woman or quote unquote really a man. Yeah. And they were these folks who have what you would stereotypically call kind of a butch presentation, right? Like, workout clothes and short hair and no makeup and that kind of stuff. Like what one would
I feel like
generally
this describes me.
like what one would generally consider more of a masculine kind of look. I mean, there was one person, literally like picked up off the ground and tossed on her face outside of a place because someone thought that she was in the wrong bathroom, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. So perfect illustration. And those are, if we're talking about arming our allies with, with comebacks, with things to say, with arguments to give back to people, I think those are all really great things. So I would keep all of those in mind. Mm-hmm. The next one, and this one is, there's a lot to unpack in this. There's a lot to unpack in all of them, but that, the idea that, so I am a moderately progressive person. I don't think a transgender person is going to go into a bathroom and molest someone, but a cis person might impersonate a trans person and hurt someone in the bathroom. Therefore, we got to be careful here.
And then you can't prosecute them because they can just say, oh, I'm trans, and that's the bathroom that I identify with, so that's why I was in there.
Right. So,
despite the fact that, sexually assaulting someone anywhere is illegal no matter what. Doesn't matter if you're trans, doesn't matter if you're cis, doesn't matter if you're in the bathroom or not. It's still illegal.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and cost us the explicit tag here for a second. So, so first of all, if anyone listening thinks that is a legitimate argument, let me address you for a second.
Fuck you.
I want you to really, really examine very deeply the idea that you are willing or may be willing to deny me and others like me rights because of what other people may do. I want you to think real hard about the idea that you're willing to punish me for someone who's not like me doing something. How about you fix your people? I know that's a super generalizing statement to make, and I don't really mean it that way. But the idea that someone else may do something bad, so sorry, you have to stay marginalized in society. Like, if that's not the height of fucked up, I don't know what is.
That's straight up blaming the victim.
That's like almost textbook definition of blaming the victim. So there's that. And then there's also the idea that it's never fucking happened. As far as anyone has been able to find, and trust me, there has been doing as far as looking
there
for
has
these
been
things.
Doing favorite phrase.
Yeah, there has been doing.
Can you tell Callie's a little sleep deprived?
I literally just finished a 12-hour drive after doing a wedding all day yesterday and a 12-hour drive the day before that. So I'm exhausted, completely out of fucks to give when it comes to this whole argument, which is why, so there was an investigative journalist actually said, okay, cool. You know what? This is a thing that people always say, so let's go ahead and find out how often that's actually happened. Guess how many they were able to find?
Let's science the shit out of
Not
this.
a single one. Not a single one. So, we have New Hampshire. The quote is, it's beyond specious to say that these laws will lead to sexual assault. Nevada, no problem since passage of 2011 law. Hawaii has not resulted in increased sexual assault.
And these are laws that protect trans people using the bathroom they want to?
Yep.
Okay.
Vermont, not aware of any problems from a 2001 law. Maine.
2001? God, go Vermont.
Yeah.
I love Vermont.
Yeah. Maine, no factual basis for sexual assault fears. Idaho, or no, I'm not Idaho. Sorry, I don't know the shapes of my states very well. I'm not a geographical person. Minnesota, sexual assault stemming from the law, not even remotely a problem. Colorado, opponents of protections are trying to create fear. Oregon, kids, 0 allegations of bathroom sexual assault. Rhode Island, no increase in sex crimes due to 2001 law. Connecticut, unaware of any sexual assault as the result of the Connecticut gender identity or expression law. So these things just don't fucking happen. They just don't. They plainly do not. Okay? So even if we grant you the whole, I'm going to go ahead and let you continue to marginalize me in society because of what other people might do if I'm given equality. Even if I grant you that, the fears are still baseless. There are lots and lots of places where these things are the law. And these problems just don't materialize. Aside from this one conservative asshat, I forget where this was, but this guy, not a trans person, just a conservative asshole, walks into a women's locker room, sat down and says, "I'm trans, you can't make me leave," as a stupid act of protest. That's as far as it's gone, is the opposition acting like fucking babies in response. That's as far as it's gone. Surprise, surprise. And then, so the other side of this, so we've thrown out a couple of things here. So I feel like we've armed folks with the idea that, like, okay, if you say, if someone says this to you, then you know what to say back. Like, I've listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 different states where there's a municipality or the entire state has these inclusive bathroom laws, and these problems just don't happen. Then you can turn around and let people know exactly what it's like for trans people in bathrooms. For example, the Williams Institute did a study of trans people in Washington, D.C. Okay, Washington, D.C. has a very, very inclusive law. And their study of transgender or gender nonconforming, genderqueer people in the Washington, D.C. area found that 70% had experienced some sort of negative reaction when using a bathroom. And there are some other pretty depressing numbers here. 27% of those who worked in Washington, D.C. experienced problems using restrooms at work that in some cases caused them to change their jobs or leave their employer entirely. 54% of all respondents reported having some sort of physical problem from trying to avoid using public restrooms, such as dehydration, kidney infections, and urinary tract infections. I almost did that to myself once. 58% reported that they have avoided going out in public due to a lack of safe public restroom facilities. I have done this. Not lately, but when I initially came out, I actually turned down going out with my friends because I didn't think I would have a safe place to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
So we have on one side this complete and utter bullshit boogeyman that the right wing has invented to fearmonger, to convince people that nothing but bad things are going to happen if someone decides to finally treat us like human beings. Then we have on the other side all of these things, these very real life things that happen to trans people in using public restrooms. So if you are at all a thinking person, what conclusion does this lead you to?
I don't know, Kelly. What does it?
Yeah, you're waiting for me to tell you what conclusion you're supposed to come to. So, and then another thing that you hear people talk about a lot of times is privacy concerns, okay? Mm-hmm. And you know what? In some ways, maybe that's a little fair, right? So I don't give a shit what gender you are. If you're a stranger, I probably don't want you to see me naked. Like, it's just my own insecurity. I don't blame it on anyone else. It's my thing that I need to work on, right? So to a certain degree, I get this a little bit. Because, like I said, in my mind, I'm kind of insecure and I don't want strangers to see me naked. I don't give a shit what's between their legs or what their gender identity is or anything like that. So when we're talking about bathrooms, though, like, I mean, let's just think logistics here for a second, right? So you have people with penises, however they identify. You have people with vaginas, however they identify. You have intersex people, however they identify, with, some kind of ambiguous genitalia, or both, or none, or, however that works in those cases, right? So if you're a person with a penis and you identify as a man, you go into the men's bathroom, it's all good. You can do whatever you want. You can stand up, pee in the urinal, or there are actually a lot of men.
Helicopter that shit everywhere, sprayed on the ceiling.
And there are a number of men, apparently, who like to sit down to pee. Whatever, no judgment, right? Like, but if you're a person with a penis who identifies as a woman, and you go into the women's bathroom, I mean, let's think about this, how this works for a second, right? There are no urinals in a women's restroom. Even if there's a whole bunch of stalls, you have your own private stall. So unless some sick fuck is really, really obsessed with your genitalia and checking over the wall, nobody's going to see your shit anyways. Calm down. Like when you honestly think these things through logically, like, these problems just disappear. You know what I mean? I walk into a women's restroom and somebody else would have to be perving me to know what my genitals look like.
But they might have to wash their hands next to you. That's really gross.
Right. Who wants to do that?
Yeah.
Right. So in my mind, the privacy thing is not altogether bullshit, because we might have our own securities, and that's all fine. But I think the more important story to tell with privacy concerns is, again, something that you brought up, Ari, is what we want to keep in mind here is that if there is a trans person in a locker room, in a bathroom, in a changing room, in any sort of gendered public facility, the person who is in danger there is the trans person. The person who has the legitimate fear of bad things happening is the trans person.
Right.
It's
because it happens way too often.
I mean, I personally know several people who have not only been verbally harassed, but physically assaulted for being in the quote-unquote wrong bathroom because someone saw them and didn't think they belonged there.
Yeah, I live in Illinois where trans people are technically a protected class, and I have friends who won't use the public restroom still because they're afraid of something happening to them.
Well, and I mean, I get seriously anxious. I mean, I wouldn't say scared out of my mind, but I get severely anxious when I'm traveling, and I'm like, I gotta go to the bathroom, and I have to stop at some random gas station in, God knows what town in the middle of nowhere. Like, I have no idea what I'm getting myself into every single time. And it's a legitimate fear. I mean, just look at the numbers, right? Like, these are not just things that people are making up, like the cis person impersonating the trans person boogeyman that doesn't exist, right?
Right, and that's even in states that don't have laws that actively encourage people to harass you.
Well, right, and see, that's what I think a lot of people don't understand is that in most places, there really is no law that describes what your rights are in these situations. As far as I know, in Ohio, like, basically, it's just kind of assumed that people, like, men go to the men's room and women go to the women's restroom. I don't know that there's any law enumerating this at all. So I don't even really know if the law is on my side or against me. And I've even heard of places where, and I don't remember where they are off the top of my head, but I remember reading about this. There are places where it is simultaneously illegal to use the bathroom opposite the gender that's marked on your identification, and illegal to use the bathroom opposite of the gender of which you are presenting. So if you're a trans person who is outwardly transitioning but hasn't changed anything with your identification documents, it's literally illegal for you to use the public restroom, period, at all. Any public restroom.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the situation there. Hey friends, I wanted to let you know about something cool that listeners of the show may be interested in. A good friend of mine is doing a fundraiser for an organization called the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. The Autistic Self-Advocacy Network seeks to advance the principles of the disability rights movement with regard to autism. ASAN believes the goal of autism advocacy should be a world in which autistic people enjoy the same access, rights, and opportunities as all other citizens. They work to empower autistic people across the world to take control of their own lives and the future of their common community, and seek to organize the autistic community to ensure their voices are heard in the national conversation about them. Their motto is "Nothing about us without us," which is something I can totally sympathize with, given the lack of trans representation in so much that affects our community. To learn more about the fundraiser and to contribute, jump on Facebook and search for a group called Autism Acceptance Month Fundraiser. It's an awesome cause, and I hope you'll check it out and contribute if you're able. Thanks!
What's up, everyone? My name is Jamie, and I'm with an organization called A Voice for the Innocent. We are a community of support for people who are affected by sexual violence. We are super excited to announce that we have partnered with the Vans Warped Tour to launch the Save Our Scene campaign. It's an initiative to reduce sex crimes in the music industry, and we've been working tirelessly to make sure it's as powerful as it can be. We've written an in-depth training for the bands on the tour to help them better understand the scope of the problem and learn how they can be part of the solution. We've done hours upon hours of research to compile every last resource we can find for people who have experienced sexual violence. We then took these resources, sorted them by location, and created state-specific free literature to hand out to music fans at every date of Warped. On top of that, we will be reaching out to people at every stop to let them know that we are another resource for them, and if they have a story to tell, we have a place where people will listen. This is, quite frankly, the largest project we have ever taken on, and we are extremely excited to have this opportunity, but we need your help. Sending 2 people on tour costs money, not to mention the cost of printing literature for every date, on top of all the materials we will need to make our campaign have the largest impact possible. This includes a tent, merchandise bins, dollies, and all the other odds and ends that come with touring and implementing this campaign. We are asking for your donations. Anything you can give will get us closer to our goal of reaching as many people on the tour as possible. To donate or to learn more, visit saveourscene.org. Thank you to everyone who is able to help us in this endeavor. And as always, thank you so much to those of you who have already helped us along the way. Hopefully we will see you out at Warped Tour.
Before we jump back into the show, it's time to thank our patrons. Big thanks this week to Alice and Michael. Thank you so much for contributing to the show financially and for being a part of this movement. Becoming a patron of the show will get you access to episodes of the show before anyone else, a big shout out on the show, access to an audio journal I've decided to keep detailing the more personal stuff I don't go into on the show, and an exclusive once-a-month patrons-only hangout. To learn more and to become a patron of the show, head over to patreon.com/thegaytheistmanifesto. Thank you. And then what I think people will run into a lot of times, and I said this at my talk in Georgia too. I keep referring back to this because it was an awesome time. It was a really great discussion. But what you will often run into, even if you are, the best equipped person with, having all of your knowledge and having all of the right arguments and, being the best ally that you can be, you're going to find that some people aren't convinced. And in this case, I don't even think a lot of times that it's necessarily because people just have their heels dug in and they, the whole thing with cognitive bias and all that kind of stuff. What you will find is that these arguments don't convince people because all of these arguments are a cover. These arguments are not really the reason that people don't want me in the same bathroom as them. What it really comes down to is the fact that people are made very uncomfortable by trans people. It's the trans people are icky argument.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've literally never heard an argument that doesn't in some way boil down to that. Because it comes back to, well, these people are mentally ill, or, there's something wrong with these people. These people are perverts and all this kind of stuff. And when you start digging, all of the think of the kids and the cis person impersonating the trans person, all of this stuff, on the surface, if you're a person who doesn't know what the hell you're talking about, those arguments can sound reasonable. And they can sound logical, even though they're obviously not. To a person who really doesn't know the facts, they can seem that way. But when you dig past it and you blow those arguments out of the water, what you start hearing about is, well, those people need help. Or there's something wrong with a man in a dress. And which, I'm not a man in a dress, but there still ain't nothing wrong with a man in a dress. So throwing that out there.
Amen to that.
Because I have seen men rock some dresses and look fabulous. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing happened with marriage equality. Even if you throw out all of the arguments that are totally based on religion, which obviously we have no regard for here on the Gay Theist Manifesto, the so-called secular arguments against same-sex marriage, things like, what's going to happen to the children, it's against evolution. I don't even know what other ones there are because none of them made any sense. But once you really dig into them, and it turns out that none of those are actually true, and you ask the person, okay, do you still believe that same-sex marriage should be not, forced on, I don't know what you would say, forced on the states or whatever, and they'd say yes, and you'd say why, and it would pretty much boil down to, because I think it's weird, I think it's gross. Mm-hmm. They can't come up with any logical reason, so once you throw all their so-called logical reasons out, it just comes down to, it makes me uncomfortable, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
Which is not how we make laws in this country.
Right.
Well, it is sometimes, but it shouldn't be.
And I'm curious too, because I mean, really so much of the fight surrounding the idea of trans people in bathrooms, I mean, it's all targeted at trans women.
Yeah, for the most part.
But I'm curious, Ari, you as a non-binary person, what does all of this mean for you? Like, how do you navigate this whole situation?
For me, most of this doesn't affect me just because, I've talked about before that it's somewhat of, I guess, a privilege to be transmasculine as opposed to transfeminine in this country, just because, the gender norms are such that, quote unquote, women or females have a lot more leeway in terms of gender expression. So if I walk into a restroom and I've got short hair and I'm just wearing a t-shirt and jeans, nobody thinks twice about it. Everyone dresses like that at some point. Well, most people anyway. But if, someone who looks more stereotypically masculine walks in wearing a dress, then that is a big deal. And that's, danger of violence. So for me, I haven't had any problems in restrooms, but I'm definitely a huge proponent of all gender restrooms, and especially single person restrooms, I think would be the best thing to protect all sorts of people, whether it's, trans people, gender nonconforming people, even people who aren't comfortable using public restrooms for other reasons, like survivors of sexual assault, or people with, mental health concerns or anxiety disorders who are uncomfortable using the restroom with other people around. I feel like that is, a good solution for everyone. But unfortunately, it's really expensive to change all the restrooms that we already have into just single-person restrooms.
Yeah, I guess I'd be curious to hear from a trans feminine non-binary person to see what their experience is there. Because you're right. I mean, a person who is read as being feminine in a men's restroom, no one generally thinks of that as a threat. They may think it's a little weird, but
yeah,
no one's generally going to see that as a threat. For the most part,
I mean, except for those cases that you brought up before of those cis women who were harassed.
Right.
For example, like if you are a woman who has ovarian cysts and you have facial hair, that might be something that
right.
might cause people to look a little strangely at you. But the patriarchy hurts us all, unfortunately, and
Right.
it's I think maybe a little more dangerous for trans feminine people, or just people assigned male at birth in general who don't conform to traditional masculine presentation.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and I know this has been kind of a short episode because I this has been on my mind a lot lately because I've been traveling a lot, and when these arguments tend to happen, I tend to get a lot of Facebook messages, and I get tagged into a lot of Facebook conversations where these discussions are happening. And I am by no means complaining about that. If you're listening and you're one of the people who do that, thank you for doing that. I'm not, this is not
Leave me alone.
Yeah, this is not me, criticizing or saying stop doing that or anything like that. But, it has gotten a little exhausting lately. I'm going to be honest. And if I decide that I don't want to engage in that conversation, I'm just not going to engage. I don't want people to think that they shouldn't come to me and ask me, to help them out with these things or tag me in any of these conversations on Facebook and stuff like that. I want those things to continue happening. So I don't want this to sound like I'm like, oh, stop making me your token trans person.
Yeah.
That's not at all how I feel. And that's not at all what I think is happening.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I would rather somebody who's not trans reach out to someone who is trans, who's willing to talk to people if you're not exactly sure, how to respond to something.
Exactly. So, having these arguments over and over, the same stupid arguments over and over again, I'll be honest, it's gotten a little exhausting. Just thinking about the idea in general that I live in a country that's debating my right to piss in a fucking public restroom. Like, Japan has high-speed rail across the entire country. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
and we're here arguing about this.
Like, Europe has the Large Hadron Collider, and we're like trying to figure out where people can piss, and Texas is
or
like,
poop, don't discriminate.
Right.
People gotta poop too.
So even just that idea in itself is just ludicrous to me. And the fact that it's the country that I live in, and I very much am aware that things are much worse in other parts of the world, because someone in another part of the world making this podcast could probably be subject to the death penalty for it. I get that. But I'm not going to minimize my own experience because of that, or the experiences of the other people I know because of that, because that's just not a helpful thing to do. So that in itself is a little exhausting. And then having to have these arguments over and over and over again from people who have very obviously never bothered to look past their own stupid initial reactions.
Right. That's the thing that really exhausts me about this whole thing, is so many people treating it like it's, an abstract idea, or it's, something, it's a political conversation that doesn't really have too much bearing on the real world. Yeah, trans people are a minority, but we're here, and this is affecting us in real life in really, really severe ways.
And the science exists, right? You don't have to pull shit out of the air to have these conversations, right? There is real science saying that being trans is a real thing, and that allowing us to live our lives the way that we know we're supposed to live them is the way to fix whatever discomfort comes along with the mismatch between body and mind, right? Like, those questions are answered. There's not really a debate left to be had there. But you can tell that people haven't even read the conservative talking points, because they're literally just pulling shit out of their ass.
As they like to do.
And it's so frustrating dealing with that over and over and over and over again. And trying to be the activist who is patient and like, okay, well, that's not really accurate. Here's how it really is. And I'm just fucking tired of it. Like, I'm so out of fucks to give. I'm so done with being nice to people over this. And then on top of both of those other things, being a person who spends a lot of time traveling and having these personal anxieties and personal worries about this shit actually happening to me while I'm traveling by myself, you know, I don't spend every hour that I'm traveling terrified out of my mind. I don't want to make it sound like that. But there is very much a mid-level sort of anxiousness. As soon as I open the door, I've got my head on a swivel, and I'm like, okay, like, can I get into the bathroom without anybody seeing me? And, you know, I walk into the bathroom, and if the stalls are all full, shit, that means I'm going to have to stand here and be seen by somebody. You know, like, all of these thoughts, like, the thing is, most people don't even give a first thought, let alone a second thought, to using a public bathroom, right? You go in, do your bit, wash your hands, and get out. It's the most natural and and habitual thing that most any person can do, right? But for trans people, especially people in less privileged situations than me that live in really bad neighborhoods and live in poverty and this kind of stuff, you know, going to the bathroom is a production, right? You have to look in the mirror and make sure, like, oh gosh, is any of my facial hair showing? Does my hair look okay? Are my clothes right? Like, do I need to stuff my bra so I look a little more feminine? And then you walk in and you're looking around to see, you know, does anybody in here look like super tough? You know, is anybody staring at me? You sneak my way over to the bathroom, kind of walking around the back rack of the snacks, and like, you get into the bathroom, and again, like, if the stalls are all full, it's like, shit, do I walk around outside and pretend like I'm not waiting? Like, or do I wait in here, get possibly seen by somebody who's going to cause a problem? And, you know, all of these things, like, just so I can pee. And, like, not even joking, I drink a lot of caffeine when I'm traveling because as we've talked about before, I don't typically sleep very well. I drink a lot of, I drink a human being amount of caffeine regularly, but when I'm traveling, I drink a ridiculous amount of caffeine. So like, I end up having to go to the bathroom a lot. And, you know, when I am going out of town for a really good friend's wedding, that's not the thing that I want to be on my mind. Or when I'm going to a conference, you know, to be with my friends, that's not the thing that I want to be on my mind. Like, and it's every time, and it wears on you so bad. So my beautiful girlfriend Celeste is here with me. Hi, Celeste.
Hi, Celeste.
So,
hey girl, what you doing?
Celeste actually wrote a poem about bathroom experiences at the college that she goes to. So I'm going to throw the mic to her real quick so she can kind of explain where this poem came from and then read the poem.
Do it.
Well, this poem comes from back when I was first coming out and transitioning at my college. I had just started dressing as myself, and going to the bathroom was pretty rough. I couldn't go to gendered restrooms because I was extremely scared, and the only gender-neutral one that I knew of on campus was usually occupied when I tried to go to it. And it was used for some other things other than going to the bathroom, and it was really frustrating. And in my frustration, I ended up writing this poem. So, I titled it A Place to Go, and I'll read it right now. All I ever wanted was a place to go, where I do not have to be afraid, where I know I won't cause won't cause panic in myself or others. But these places are rare, all because my genitals do not match my mind or my heart. Why is it that I am labeled a pervert when I just need to answer nature's call? Why is it that I am judged by people who I've never met or even talked to? Why is it that you want to create a separate space for me even though there was already one that existed? Why do you then turn around and use this space for other things? Why do I smell smoke and other unpleasant activities in this place? You treat it like a private room that's your privilege to use. Why wait because I am too afraid to use a room that you're able to use freely? And wait. And wait. And wait. Till I'm on the verge of tears, frustration, anger, sorrow, or nausea, until I have no more time to wait. You leave me with no option other than to wait until I get home. You would complain if I used the other rooms available to you. You take the space because you can, and I have no room to complain, as is your space too. This space that is rare for me, but plentiful for you.
Well, there it is.
Mic drop.
Yeah, mic drop, indeed. So, for anyone who hasn't really heard me go off on this before, I hope that this has been eye-opening and helpful, because, like I said earlier, I think you're going to find these conversations happening more and more often. And if you're a person who is not of trans experience, these arguments may not come easily to you because you haven't experienced what it's like to be afraid to go to the bathroom in public. And what I hope this episode has done is has helped arm you to be a better ally, because that's, at the end of the day, that's kind of why we do this show. Because we want people who are queer, who are trans, who are atheist, who are some combination thereof to know that they're not alone, and that there are people out there who care about their stories and care about them as people. But also for our allies, to arm our allies, because this community is so full of wonderful, wonderful people who want nothing more than to help people like us. And I feel like that's probably the majority of the audience for this show, are these amazing people who are allies, who want to do right, they want to help, they want to do good. Sometimes it's hard to know exactly what the right thing is. If you're a person who doesn't live in that community, if you're a person who doesn't have that experience every day, you need to arm yourself. And I think it's I don't want to say, and I feel personally, I don't think every trans person is obligated to do this, but I feel it's incumbent upon me, at least, to do what I can to help arm our allies, to go out and speak on our behalf, because the way that dynamics of privilege work means that a lot of times your voice is going to mean more than mine to someone in this argument. If you have someone who is spouting bigotry and has, these horrible things to say, if I come to them and say, well, you know what, like, as a trans person, here's my experience, they don't care. They've turned me off. As soon as I said, well, as a trans person myself, they've just turned me off and shut me out completely. But you, as an ally, can speak to this person and say, you know what, like, I have a trans friend, or I know a trans person, or I've heard this trans person talk, and, like, all that stuff's really not true. I even used to think this way sometimes. Like, I used to think that trans people were scary and icky and perverted, but then, like, I got to know somebody, and you know what? Like, they're just people, just like anyone else, trying to live their lives and trying to be happy and trying to, to build a place for themselves in the world. And then you can arm yourself with all of the things that Ari and I have talked about in the episode so far. You can have your facts and figures in hand, but you're also set up to humanize trans people. One of the things that I always say when people ask, how can you talk to someone who is so bigoted and vitriolic? And you know what? The unfortunate thing, sometimes you can't. Right? There are some people who are so entrenched that you are never going to be able to change their mind. But oftentimes what it comes down to is an in-group, out-group mentality. Human beings are tribal, right? That's how our society and our cultures evolved. We're in tribes. If you see someone as a member of your tribe, you're more likely to treat that person well and to treat that person with respect. And so the entire idea of having these conversations is not to get people to feel differently about their out-groups, but to get people to include more people in their in-groups. I've said this a million times, but, Pew did a study of people who changed their mind on marriage equality before the Supreme Court decision. Overwhelmingly, the people who changed their mind, the reason that they did it was because they got to know someone who was gay, or they found out that a loved one was gay. We can flagellate ourselves all we want over the fact that we should be compassionate to people whether or not we have a personal stake in the issue or not. But the fact is that human beings don't generally work that way. Things don't generally matter to us until they become personal. So the idea is to make it personal, to do your best to paint yourself or the people that you're being allies to as human beings who are just trying to get along in the world, who are just trying to be happy, who are just trying to live their lives. And what I hope we've done with this episode is make that a thing that's a little easier to do. These conversations aren't always easy to have. They're not always comfortable. It is really exhausting and really draining to be exposed to hatred and bigotry. I don't think that can be overstated. The first time that I really truly ran into vitriolic hatred, I was shocked. And I mean, almost shocked, like if I'd had a car accident, kind of shocked. Like I was just shaken to the core. It's really, really draining to experience those kind of things. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be towards yourself as a person for it to shake you up that bad. So don't feel bad if you feel like maybe you have to disengage. Maybe you don't have the capacity to have that conversation with somebody today. That's okay. It's okay to take care of yourself. But what I hope this episode and the show in general has done is to make those things a little bit easier and to help people feel a little bit more comfortable advocating for our community and for ourselves as people. So
yeah, and that gets back to why we need allies. I hear a lot from people who want to be good allies to the trans community, to the queer community, any kind of marginalized community, and they ask me, I want to be able to speak out. And whenever these conversations come up and people are saying things that are harmful, people are saying things that are incorrect, I want to be able to talk to them and explain to them why that's not true and to advocate for the trans community. But I also don't want to speak for trans people, for queer people, for any kind of marginalized group. And I don't want to say something that's wrong and give people the wrong idea. So what should I do? And my advice is always, first of all, get educated, talk to your friends who are in this marginalized group, whatever group that might be, and hear their concerns, hear what they're saying, and listen to that. And then second step is, if there is a situation where there isn't someone from that group who can speak for themselves, or there is someone there who is in that group but for some reason can't or doesn't feel up to speaking for themselves or for that group in that instant, then use your education, use the knowledge that you've gained and the compassion that you've learned to show for these people in all sorts of different groups, and use your place of privilege to combat these harmful things that are happening. Because a lot of times, even if there is someone who's part of that marginalized group, if they're hearing something like this, then that could be something that is really anxiety provoking for them, something that makes them extremely upset because it's so personal to them and they can't engage in that moment. And that's why we need people who aren't so personally affected by these sorts of things to be able to help us, because sometimes we just can't. And it's not to say that we need, cis saviors or straight saviors, or we need people to speak for us, but we need people to speak with us when we can't speak.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point, because whenever there's a conversation surrounding allyship, there's a conversation surrounding, the idea of appropriating one's experience. And I had someone tell me once when I was talking about things that trans people face, like, oh, you know what? Like, I know exactly what you've been through. Like, I got made fun of for being fat as a kid, so like, I totally get it. And it's like, swing and a miss there, fella. That's not really how that works. But the idea is to find those things that trigger empathy with people. And obviously, we could probably do a 10-episode series on allyship, and maybe we will at some point.
Hell yeah.
But, what I would say, if there are allies listening if you're still not feeling 100% comfortable, but you want to advocate and you want to do right, like Aria said, you want to reach out to members of those communities before you engage in those conversations, right? You want to arm yourself by speaking with the people in those communities. And you have two people here who are very willing to do that.
And if we don't know, we probably know people who can find out answers for you.
Right,
on
because every queer and
is.
trans person knows every other queer and trans person. That's a rule.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, obviously we don't want to obligate someone to be the trans spokesperson or the token trans person that's like, okay, ask that person all your questions. You know, and I don't want to obligate someone else to be that thing, because that takes a lot of energy, and sometimes it takes energy that people just plain don't have because they're fighting daily for their own survival, right? Ari and I are lucky enough to be people for whom that's not our situation, right? We have our struggles, right? We have problems, we have things that we deal with, but daily survival is not a struggle for us. So we're able to be those voices, and we're able to speak out, and we're able to have those conversations. So if if there are things that you're still unsure about, at the end of every episode, I tell people to reach out, and that's not just something that sounds cool at the end of a radio show. Like, I really,
it does sound cool. But...
well, I mean, it does. I want to make that very clear. It sounds super cool because I'm super cool, but, but that's not something I say just to say it. I really do mean it. I want people to reach out. I love hearing from people who listen to the show. I mean, even if it's just, hey, Callie, I listen to the show. I love what you do. Thanks. Like, I love hearing from people. Like, it's just, I love making connections with people. But, even more so having those substantive conversations where somebody's like, I heard this episode and I kind of had a question. I'm a busy person. I'm a very busy person. I am never too busy to have those conversations with people. You may not get a response right away, but you'll get a response. Like, I do this kind of thing because I want to interact with people and I want to have those conversations. So, even after all of this, if there are still questions that people have, please do reach out. The Gaytheist Manifesto @gmail.com is our email address.
Wait. No, we're not there yet.
No, we're not there yet. I'm just saying, like, I just want to throw that out there. That's our email address. You can message us on Facebook, all of that. You can message me on Facebook. So,
yeah, message me too.
Yeah.
I also exist. Sometimes.
Sometimes. Mm-hmm. Well, Ari, did you have anything else before we wrap up here?
Just getting back to the whole, if you still have questions, and allies being concerned about saying something wrong, one of the wonderful things about being a skeptic and being a non-believer in any kind of religious dogma is that it's okay to say, I don't know. And to go and say, do your research afterwards. Someone asks you a question, you're not sure. Say, I don't know about that, but, I will ask so-and-so who might know about it, and I'll get back to you. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep. Absolutely. Oh, son of a bitch. I didn't paste the outro into the run sheet.
No!
God damn it. Fucking ruining everything.
Callie is fail. The embodiment of fail. Ooh, my armpits stink.
That's hot.
I know.
And that, my friends, is going to do it for this episode of the Gaytheist Manifesto on Secular Media Network. I want to say thank you to my co-host, Ari.
Whatever. I guess it was fine.
Oh, ouch. You can find the show on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto. You can email us at thegaytheistmanifesto@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at GaytheistCallie.
So I know my last outros have been really long, so I'm going to try to make this kind of short and not really waste everyone's time. So if you really want to contact me, which, whatever, if we're going to be honest, we all know nobody does, and everyone's just using me. But I guess if you really want to, you can find me on Facebook at Ari Coleman. But, keep in mind that my name is changing to Ari Stillman on April 25th, if anyone's paying attention to anything that I say. Probably not. Facebook is fine and all, I guess, but if you really loved me, you would email me at aristillman4@gmail.com. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I've always been there to support you, and I just want this one thing. But whatever, do it or don't, it's fine. Doesn't matter to me, just do what you want. I'm fine.
Fair enough. And you can find the show on Twitter at The Gaytheists. If you want to support the work we do, you can head to patreon.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto and make a per episode donation in an amount as little as $1 per episode to support the production of the show and the activism that we do. If that's not doable, you can go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating, and that helps us get heard by lots more people. Before we go, I want you to know that if you're lost, you're hurting, you're scared, if you feel like no one cares and no one understands, you need to know there's a community out here that loves you, cares for you, knows that you're capable of amazing things and that you are worthy of love. If you're struggling, please don't be afraid to reach out. Until next time, friends, this is the Gaytheist Manifesto.